taps into the fever pitch between night and dawn at a festival. Please welcome Brennan Utley.
Brian Bovine, son of a single mother, contemplative, introverted, slightly irritable, nervous, anxious, collector of fears, unable to finish tasks, aware of others but not involved, occasional smoker of hash, definitely taking antidepressants, occasionally skips his antidepressants and descends into ruinous slumps. Wannabe songwriter, wannabe filmmaker, wannabe poet, wannabe painter, wants to be anything other than himself. Wants to finish something for God's sake. Did finish something once, the tarot deck, his own tarot deck. Had tried recording albums, making short films, producing paintings, even tried writing a novel. Forever unable to finish, unable to publish, plagued by perfection. Sent to a hospital 2 years ago where he drank out of a paper cup and stared at a cement block on the wall for 8 hours straight. Can't believe he finished the deck of cards he's been working on and designing now for going on 3 years. It may be his life's work, he feels. Has wanted to share it with the other festival goers since Friday and Saturday. Was too afraid, too self-conscious, lay trembling in a sleeping bag for most of last night. And after this dark night of the soul, decided to wake the hell up Sunday morning to show off his creation. Acceptor of solitude, best friend of solitude. Will you be my best man type friend of solitude? Often alone, thoughtful but afraid of everyone like that one song by The National. Frustrated with himself, hateful of himself, understands deeply that he needs to open up his tent to step out into the world and advocate for himself, and realizes that specific morning that this stepping out of said tent is a metaphor for self-actualization, of being in your own bones, of being who you truly are, even though it's fucking terrifying. And Bovine sort of half considers this thought rising from his sleeping bag on Sunday and sitting before the coffee urn at dusk, percolating sky, nimbus clouds, frosted blankets of cirrostratus, a purplish glow at the edge of the horizon, purple like all colors being symbolic, much like the tarot, much like Bovine's own deck that he glances through, staring at all the images, the work he put in, at the magical product before him. It wasn't there, and then it was there, and it seemed so daunting at first, and it was at first not knowing where to start. Only the number of cards, 78, the number beating at his brain as he sweated in the sinuous sweat of the Texas heat, and he didn't even have an accent. Southern Midwest, though he did say y'all and only first realized this when he got questioned while working as a janitor in a craft store. The customers would randomly mistake him for a service representative. He trembled in the morning air, always shaking. He realized if he was going to try to capture that exact moment in all its complexity, that one tense would not do it justice. All tenses would be needed, the past, present, and future interconnected and looping, each becoming the other upon reflection would need to be. Future being used in the present, being read in the past, consumed by the past. He read the tarot with 3 cards, the past, present, and future. Not a prediction of the future, a possible future. He didn't use his deck for divination, though it could be used that way in the future. He used his deck for symbolic reflection. He had named this deck the endless nature of the American myth. All of its symbolism, the images he based on the Rider-Waite tarot deck, were American images. Not the Knight of Cups, but the Knight of Language. Not the 7 of Pentacles, but the 7 of History. Not the Page of Wands, but the Page of Entertainment. Not the 5 of Swords, but the 5 of Politics. The 5 of Politics held the image of Donald Trump in the foreground, lifting his arms up in victory, and the image of Hillary Clinton with her head hung low, retreating into the distance. This was not a card that glorified Trump. The tarot rarely glorified. It was fair and graceful. The card was a message, an archetype, a theme, a reminder about overconfidence, an important reminder to any narcissist, which is most of us at this point, TBH. Bovine flipped through his cards, among others, 78 being the exact number. 1 of 78, numerology played a factor. He thought this to himself, striding towards the belly of the Whale, the festival's primary bar and cafe, to get a croissant. Was it even open this morning? Yes, it was. He'd simply wanted the movement, wanted to change the position of his body from one place to the other. This was something the author despised contemplating, how to move the characters from place to place. Maybe it was best to think them through space, to have them think themselves through space, to have them imagine for themselves, if written, where they would go, what they would do. They, the character, would then decide their own narrative. And was this located holographic in time, past, present, future? Or as they moved, arrived, began the transitional space of a whole held in space, moving through and reaching the belly of the Whale, where a blushing barista brewed coffee and placed croissants on a decorative plate, where he sat chewing, finding a self that had been lost to anxiety so many times, only to return, the endless nature of the American myth. It had become an anxious nation in the 2010s. It had always been an anxious nation. Manifest destiny, the paving of the West, the commercialization of all things. capitalization, punctuation, economic structures being constructed and deconstructed. The croissant had that kind of flaky crust he expected from a croissant. A slightly satisfied belly, but there wasn't enough time. He needed to get out there, to transcend, to finally transmit the word, trans meaning to pass through, to move beyond thoroughly, placing the decorative plate in a plastic bin once the croissant was consumed. Moving beyond the limitations of fear into the morning air, deck in hand. Brian Bovine, promoter of art, of his own work, the hyper of the self, of his own creation, transcender of the terror that can cripple the creative mind, that thwarts its completion, but just because it's finished doesn't mean it's consumed. As Americans, we learn that objects don't exist, don't transcend to become subjects until consumed. Another American myth, but once consumed, doesn't it all become shit then anyways? Isn't that the natural order, nature? Shit happens, it's always happening. In the process of becoming, transitioning, another character moving through time and space, and how should I move them again? It's exhausting, really. The mind of a creator, of the creative, and isn't this a festival to begin with? A celebration, a static merriment, embellishment. Bovine coming across a high cheekbone, tie-dye tank top, wearing olive-skinned 20-something with neon pink sunglasses. A sort of arty, yet also possibly involved with a frat sort of vibe. If Bovine wasn't high off his own shit, remember the discussion about consumption earlier, forgotten it will return, he would have possibly been intimidated. Well, maybe he was a little intimidated, but not by the fact that the 20-something clearly worked out and was handsome, no. It was more that this, showing off his art, was new to him. So much of everything was so new to all of the newness had ceased to be. Another breakdown in time, and goddamn it, there's going to be so many you just fucking wait.